What if I told you that the earth beneath your feet was once shaped by footsteps larger than houses? That the mountains you see on the horizon weren't born entirely from the earth's restless crust, but from the ruins of beings so massive that ancient people called them gods? Imagine this. You're standing in an open valley. The air is still, heavy with silence. And then, in the distance, you hear it. A low, rhythmic tremor that rolls through the ground like the pulse of the planet itself. The birds scatter. The trees tremble. The vibration grows stronger until the earth beneath you cracks. You fall to your knees as a shadow swallows the sun. You look up, and what you see defies reason. A figure, impossibly tall, framed against the light. The ground shakes with every step. You realize in that moment that you're looking at something you were never meant to see. Something ancient, something that shouldn't exist. This isn't a scene from a fantasy novel. This is what ancient history actually describes. From the towering Nephilim of the Hebrew Bible, to the Titans of Greece, the Jotnar of Norse myth, and the Fomorians of Celtic legend, the world's oldest stories all begin the same way. There was a time when giants walked the earth. But here's the question no one dares to ask. Were those myths memories? The further we go back into time, the more the lines blur between legend and history. The Sumerians, the first known civilization, wrote of powerful Anunnaki, godlike beings who descended from the heavens and ruled over humankind. The Hebrew texts describe the Nephilim, hybrid offspring of divine beings and human women. In Greek mythology, before the reign of Zeus, there was the rule of the Titans, colossal beings of immense power who shaped the world with their hands. Every ancient culture remembered a time when the earth belonged not to humans, but to them. But were these stories simply symbolic? Ancient ways of explaining natural disasters, powerful rulers, or forgotten species? Or were they fragmented memories of something real, a lost chapter in human history that science refuses to acknowledge? Archaeology, at least officially, says giants never existed. Yet the deeper we dig, the stranger things get. Around the world, from the hills of Sardinia to the plains of North America, legends persist of enormous bones being unearthed. Bones that don't seem to belong to any known animal or human. Ancient megalithic structures, from Baalbek in Lebanon to the 800-ton stones of Pumapunku in Bolivia, seem designed for beings far larger than ourselves. And across ancient art, petroglyphs, carvings, even temple reliefs, the same image appears again and again. Tiny humans standing before towering, godlike figures. Coincidence or evidence? As time goes on, we've learned to dismiss what we can't explain. When explorers found strange skeletons in North America in the 1800s, skeletons 7, 8, even 10 feet tall, the remains mysteriously vanished into museum basements. When early archaeologists uncovered sites that didn't fit the timeline of human civilization, they were quietly reclassified or forgotten. It's as if someone, somewhere, wants us to forget. But what if the ancient world wasn't a story of evolution, but replacement? What if humanity wasn't always the dominant species? What if we were the survivors of something much larger. This is the story of the giants, the first rulers of Earth, the beings who built our myths, shaped our landscapes, and perhaps never truly left. Welcome to the hidden current. And tonight, we're going to ask the question, when giants walked the earth, were they myths or memories? The evidence buried in stone. The first traces of giants aren't found in books, they're carved into stone. Across continents, separated by oceans and millennia, the same image reappears. Enormous beings towering over humans, holding tools, weapons, or symbols of power. In the limestone cliffs of Bashkortostan, Russia, there's a megalithic wall, known as the megaliths of Mount Shoria. Each stone block weighs more than 100 tons, some over 300, perfectly fitted, smooth, aligned. No record exists of who built it. No culture claims it. Yet the pattern of construction mirrors ancient architecture seen thousands of miles away, from the Cyclopean walls of Peru to the mysterious fortresses of Sardinia. How could ancient people with primitive tools have lifted stones that modern cranes can barely move? Archaeologists often say, "We don't know," but local legends do. In the highlands of Peru, Quechua elders speak of the Chulpa, tall, pale beings who lived before the flood. They built the tallest towers and cities until the sun burned them to ash. In Sardinia, locals still whisper of the Giganti di Monte Prama, colossal stone figures unearthed in the 1970s, buried deep beneath farmland. Each statue over 8 feet tall, carved with geometric armor and hollow eyes, like guardians of a forgotten age. And then there's Baalbek, Lebanon. At the Temple of Jupiter lies a stone called the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. 1,000 tons of solid limestone. No modern machinery has ever moved anything that size with such precision. Who placed it there, and why? The Romans claimed they built Baalbek, but they couldn't explain the foundation. They admitted it was ancient, built by those who came before the Romans, even before the Phoenicians. Who were they? Perhaps the answer lies not just in architecture, but in myth. In Sumer, cradle of civilization, the gods known as the Anunnaki descended to Earth. Texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh describe them as giants, great in stature, radiant in power, able to reshape mountains and rivers. And Gilgamesh himself, the hero king of Uruk, was said to be 2/3 divine, 1/3 human. His height? 11 cubits, almost 18 feet tall. In ancient Egypt, early depictions of divine rulers often show pharaohs many times larger than their subjects. Most dismiss this as symbolic art. But what if it wasn't symbolism at all? What if it was memory of rulers who really did stand above mankind? Even in the Bible, the giants return. Genesis 6:4 reads, "There were giants in the earth in those days, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men." Those sons of God, the Nephilim, appear not as abstract metaphors, but as living, breathing beings. And after the flood, the scriptures say, there were giants also afterward. That single line changes everything. It suggests they survived, through time, through cataclysm, through myth. Across the Atlantic, the Hopi people of North America speak of the Panaktu, red-haired giants who ruled before the Great Flood.
The Paiute tribes call them the Site-Ka, fierce, flesh-eating giants who once terrorized the region. In the early 1900s, miners excavating Nevada's Lovelock Cave claimed to have found giant skeletal remains and strands of red hair. Those remains disappeared into museum archives, never seen again. Coincidence or pattern? In 1912, in Wisconsin, farmers discovered dozens of burial mounds containing elongated skulls and bones of individuals over 8 feet tall. In 1931, newspapers in Nevada reported skeletons of similar size found in Lake Mead. Even Abraham Lincoln once remarked while visiting Niagara Falls that the eyes of that extinct race of giants whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as ours do now. If Lincoln himself knew of them, who buried the truth? Everywhere the pattern repeats. Ancient architecture, impossible stonework, myths of gods and giants, and skeletons that disappear. Maybe this isn't coincidence. Maybe this is evidence, scattered, suppressed, buried under centuries of denial. Perhaps humanity isn't the first intelligent species to shape civilization, but the latest. Because if the myths are right, there was a world before ours, an age of beings who stood at the boundary between God and man. They built monuments so vast they could be seen from the heavens. They left behind stories of wars that split the earth. And when they vanished, we inherited their ruins and called them temples. The Great Flood and the Fall of the Giants. There is one event that unites nearly every ancient culture, a cataclysm that reset the world. It is remembered as the Great Flood. From the mountains of Ararat to the plains of Mesopotamia, from the Nile to the Andes, the story is always the same. The gods, angered by corruption and chaos, sent water to erase a world gone astray. But beneath the poetry lies something that feels like memory, not myth. In the ancient Sumerian Eridu Genesis, the gods decide to destroy humankind for becoming too loud. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the god Enlil sends the flood to wipe out both humans and the demigod race, the Nephilim. And in the Book of Enoch, it is said the Watchers, divine beings who mated with humans, taught forbidden knowledge, metalwork, astronomy, magic. When their offspring, the giants, began to devour everything, even humans themselves, the Creator unleashed the waters to cleanse the earth. But some survived. In every flood legend, there is a survivor. Zuziodra, Utnapishtim, Noah. Each one warned by the gods to build a vessel before the storm came, and after the waters receded, they began again. Not in random places, but at the exact cradles of later civilization. Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, Anatolia. It's as if survivors of an older world carried fragments of knowledge and rebuilt. What if those gods weren't divine at all, but remnants of an advanced race that predated recorded history? A civilization erased by flood and time, remembered only as beings of immense size and power. Archaeologists have found evidence of sudden global flooding around 10,800 BCE, the Younger Dryas event. Massive ice sheets melted, ocean levels rose over 400 feet, and coastlines vanished overnight. That was the same era Plato described as the fall of Atlantis in a single day and night of misfortune. And where did he say Atlantis lay? Beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. Exactly where modern sonar has revealed the ghostly shapes of sunken structures off the coasts of Spain and Morocco. If Atlantis truly existed, it would have been the center of that lost world, a world that may have given rise to Egypt, Sumer, and the gods themselves. After the flood, survivors migrated. Some went east, bringing astronomy, irrigation, and architecture to Mesopotamia. Others followed the Nile southward, carrying with them the blueprint of civilization. And when they reached the fertile valley between desert and river, they built something that would last for millennia: Kemet, the Black Land. But Egypt was not born from nothing. Its symbols, mathematics, and myths bear traces of something older, something foreign. In ancient temple carvings, the earliest gods of Egypt, Ptah, Atum, Osiris, are described as the ones who came from the primeval waters. They did not rise in Egypt, they arrived there, and they carried the memory of a drowned world. The ancient Egyptians never called themselves the first. They said they inherited their land from the Zep Tepi, the first time, the golden age when gods walked among men. To most historians, Zep Tepi is myth, but to the priests of Heliopolis, it was literal history, the record of those who survived the cataclysm and rebuilt under new stars. In the Valley of the Kings, walls whisper of beings tall as date palms, voices like thunder, who taught early humans how to shape stone and read the heavens. In Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, a site predating Egypt by thousands of years, pillars stand carved with animals and celestial maps. Each pillar weighs up to 60 tons. No wheels, no metal tools, and yet mathematical perfection. Who built it? Archaeologists call them pre-pottery Neolithic peoples. But these people, who had no cities, somehow constructed the world's first temple complex, aligned with the stars. Maybe Göbekli Tepe wasn't the beginning of civilization. Maybe it was its rebirth. The flood didn't destroy everything. It reset the stage. And those who survived, whether divine, human, or something in between, became the seed of every later myth of gods and kings. The story of the giants didn't end under the floodwaters. It evolved. Their bloodlines thinned, their power waned, but their memory remained. When the survivors reached Egypt, they brought not just tools, but memory. They encoded it into monuments, stone pyramids, sacred geometry, the alignment of temples to Orion's belt. Every structure was a map back to the stars, a message from the builders of the world before the flood, and those builders would become the gods of every later age. Echoes of the first gods. As the sun set over the Nile, the ancients looked to the stars, not in wonder, but in remembrance. They were not the first to dream, to build, or to worship. They were inheritors of a world long drowned, a civilization erased but never forgotten. The gods of Egypt were once men, and those men were the echoes of something older, the survivors of a vanished age, whose memories became myths, whose monuments became temples, whose science became magic. Every symbol carved in stone, every pyramid reaching toward the sky is not a beginning. It's a message, a whisper from the past. We were here before you. And perhaps when our own world fades into dust, their words will still remain, etched into the earth, waiting to be rediscovered by the next civilization that dares to remember.